Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the most important things we believe will be an issue going into next year will be residue breakdown. Because everything got delayed this season, we think harvest could occur a little bit later, and some of those stocks just might not break down very well going into next year. We're going to tell you how to speed residue breakdown on your farm.
Well, I love that you're concerned about what's going on above ground, Brian. I'm looking at the below ground aspect, and I want to talk about soil organic matter. We'll talk about why this is a really important thing to know for your farm.
As always, we've got an Iron Talk coming up later in the show and a Weed of the Week as well. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
You spend all year working hard to get as much yield as possible at harvest. The last thing you want to do is put your grain in the bin and have it spoil before you take it to market. Introducing the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer looking for a low-cost monitoring solution for existing bins, the Grain Temp Guard tracks temperature and humidity with an alarm system to alert you when your grain exceeds safe thresholds. For more information on a system for your bins, visit farmshopmfg.com.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about gibberellic acid and why it is important in plants.
When you think about gibberellic acid, right away you may be thinking, wait a second, what on earth are you talking about here? This is something that's actually produced naturally in plants. So when you have something that's natural, Brian, I would ask, why do we need to put it on if the plant's already going to make it?
Wait, hold up. We got to talk about why this is important to begin with. What gibberellic acid does is it basically allows the plant or tells the plant to grow taller. So, for example,
stem elongation.
Yes.
It's important for stem elongation.
Yep. So when we think about with soybeans, for example, they have different nodes and branches that come off. The point is, the more gibberellic acid that's in there, then the longer, the greater distance there is between those nodes. Same thing in corn, same thing in a lot of different crops. Okay, so Darren mentioned that this gibberellic acid naturally occurs in plants, but here's what you need to know. The warmer the conditions are, the more gibberellic acid there is. This is the reason why when planting very early, you're going to find a lot of crops are going to be much shorter in stature.
Or if you're looking at your lawn when it's really, really early in the spring, you maybe have to mow once every couple of weeks, but boy, as soon as it starts warming up, you're mowing twice a week because there's so much stem elongation.
Yep, exactly. So like with our crops, like corn, for example, this is one of the things my dad told me when I was a kid, and I just didn't even understand it. He said, well, if you want silage corn, you want it to grow really tall, just plant it a little later. Plant it when the conditions are hot, and that corn's going to get way taller. I thought, what in the world's he talking about? Well, it all comes back to this gibberellic acid.
So the important thing here is if you want to influence plant growth and you want to get a little more growth out of that grass early in the season, for example, or you want to get the corn plant off to a better start and getting a little taller with an early planting date, you can add gibberellic acid now right in the furrow and the plant will take it right in, or you could even spray it on the foliage very early in the season. What would target an application would be times where the daytime high temperatures are averaging in the 50s or 60s, not in the 70s or 80s, because at that time you're getting warm enough the plant's going to produce quite a bit on its own.
So what we talk about is with pastures, spraying some gibberellic acid on in the spring and in the fall, with silage corn, spraying it in the spring. The big thing that I would tell you here is at this point, we haven't found that gibberellic acid is giving us a big impact on grain yield, but it's absolutely giving us a big impact on tonnage. So we would just really encourage you, if you are a farmer, if you are a livestock person, then take a look at this gibberellic acid. There are products out there that you can buy, like Rise Up Smartgrass, for example, and apply this when conditions are cooler to get more elongation of your stems.
Getting a little more height out of your crop could be very important, especially if you can keep the weeds out of it as well. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up later in the show.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
What's the most complex industry on Earth? It isn't big data or commodities, not genetics or meteorology or even logistics. It's a business that involves them all. It's farming. And we're proud to work with generations of American farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on Earth.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
The Guardian Air Twin Spray Nozzle from Hypro produces a twin spray pattern with air inducted droplets for superior coverage, even in dense canopies. Be effective and efficient with your spray application this season with the Guardian Air Twin. Hypro, helping you spray better.
One of the things I'm most concerned about going into the spring of 2020 is how about all our residue we have coming off of 2019? Is that going to get broken down very well going into 2020? The reason why I'm worried about this, I think there might be more continuous corn acres. I think that we could have a real issue with late harvest this fall with all the late planting that there was. So today we want to talk about how you can increase the speed of residue breakdown on your farm.
First of all, if you haven't harvested your corn yet, you still have a lot of options on the table. For example, can you run a chopping corn head? This is something we've been doing on our farm now for a number of years. We're sizing up that residue into small chunks. And as we do that, we're cutting those stalks up before they get run over. So we've got a nice spread of the stalk material. This is going to be a big thing rather than piling it up in a big pile. And the other thing is those small pieces, they've got a whole bunch of exposed surface area where we can get faster breakdown with microbial action.
Now, when Darren talks about that microbial action, that happens a lot faster if you till all your residue into the soil. So that's always on the table that you can do tillage. But for a lot of farmers, they don't want to do tillage simply because there's more erosion potential. You're going to decrease your soil's organic matter level. I mean, there are a lot of bad things, plus the fact that it costs money. So instead, what a lot of people want to know is how do I just naturally get that residue to break down faster? Darren mentioned the chopping corn head. That's absolutely huge. But just understand, what does break down residue out there? Well, it's bacteria. There are beneficial bacteria that are going to be out there breaking that residue down. What do those bacteria need? They need oxygen and they need nitrogen. So those are two real big keys that we want to talk about.
So let's talk about the nitrogen, because so often I hear farmers say, hey, I'm thinking about putting on some liquid 28% or some liquid 32% or some form of nitrogen out in my corn stalks to try to help speed that breakdown. I know they're really high in carbon, and corn stalks a lot of times they'll say are 60 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, but obviously there's a little bit of fluctuation there. So if I can get that ratio down to say 12 to 1, where I've got a whole bunch of nitrogen out there to help these microbes break it down, that's a good thing, right? Well, I answer, of course it is. It's a great thing. I would love to see some nitrogen out there, but you also need time. So let's just say you're harvesting the 1st of November and freeze up has already happened. Well, you're going to get a whole lot of microbial activity out there. But if it's still warm out and you've got some time, you definitely can see a speed up and breakdown.
Yeah, and even if you don't have time this fall, that nitrogen's still going to be there come spring, so it absolutely can help. Throwing a little sulfur with it as well can make a difference. Now, I mentioned oxygen too. If you've had a drainage issue and you haven't gotten that addressed and gotten your water table down with drain tile, you're not going to have as much living bacteria out there and your residue's not going to break down as quickly. So a lot of people talk about this as soil health. Whenever you hear soil health, that means you've got lots of oxygen in that soil and you've got lots of beneficial microbes that are constantly working for you.
Now, speaking of those microbes, Brian, I am seeing more of a trend industry-wide to putting some microbes out with that nitrogen application. Products like Decomp, for example, are getting used widely now to add the microbes out there to help speed this breakdown. We saw this year some guys that were trying different microbial products. They saw some products that worked well, others that didn't work quite as well. So it's still not just a blanket statement of, yep, you want to put microbes in. You want to make sure that the ones you're going to do are going to be beneficial for you, but we do see some benefit adding the right microbes in.
Yeah, like Darren mentioned, Decomp, that's got 65 beneficial microbes in there. So you have 65 different species. You're talking millions and millions of microbes that are working out there on every acre. That's enormous. We're after that. We want faster residue breakdown, and we know that microbes do the job, so adding more beneficial microbes absolutely can help.
So whether you've already started your corn harvest or you've still got corn out in the field, you've got time to influence residue breakdown going into 2020. We think this will be a very important thing to have a successful crop next year. One other important thing for next year's crop and this year's crop is weed control. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
Why do I farm? It's just something I've always wanted to do. Something I've known since I was my daughter's age. I think about what kind of farm I'm going to hand over to her. About how I can make it more successful, more sustainable. I talk to other farmers, with agronomists, and advisors to help me make better decisions, to figure out what's working for them, and how to make it work even better for my farm. Because when you farm, you have a responsibility to keep it growing, to look at a freshly planted field, a newborn calf, even your bottom line. Then ask yourself, how do I help this grow? How can I make it even more productive? I ask myself these questions every day, because no matter what I'm doing, I'm still a farmer.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference. Because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
If you look at average soil organic matter on farms across the United States in the last 100 years, the trend has been this: organic matter levels have gone down. That is not a good thing. Today we're going to talk about why organic matter is so important and what you can do to build organic matter levels on your farm rather than seeing them fall.
So there's two things I want to talk about, Brian. I want to talk about why we're seeing organic matter go down and what can we do to turn this trend around and start building it back up?
Yeah, so let's start with why has it been going down? It's tillage. What happens when you till your soil? You speed the process of organic matter breakdown. The reason why, soil scientists have explained this to me too, because right away you stop and say, wait a second here. There's all kinds of residue on the soil surface. If I till, that's throwing the residue down into the ground. Shouldn't I increase organic matter levels? Nope, you don't. What soil scientists have told me is basically it's like adding fuel to the fire. When you put more oxygen into that ground, it speeds the breakdown of soil organic matter. Now, the breakdown of soil organic matter just naturally is a good thing because it's going to release nutrients for you. If you just have soil, whether it's tilled or untilled, a lot of times we're talking about just the standard release for every 1% of organic matter you have in your soil of roughly 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen, 4 to 7 pounds of phosphate, and 2 to 3 pounds of sulfur on a lot of Midwestern United States soils. So if you have 5% organic matter, that's huge. You're talking 100 to 150 pounds of nitrogen every year you get for free, and a lot of the phosphate and sulfur. So if you speed the process of that breakdown, well, obviously you didn't have to put the fertilizer out there, but what's happening is you're mining the soil. So long term, your soil organic matter levels are going down, so you won't get as much free release in the future.
Well, we definitely see this on a wide scale, as you mentioned, but building it back up is really needing to be a focus for many growers.
Yeah,
it
but why?
certainly is for us.
But why? We already mentioned the nutrients that come out of this organic matter, but also understand that for each 1% of organic matter increase in soil, we usually see about 4% more water holding capacity. So let's say in your lifetime, if you could increase your soil organic matter level by 3%, that's 12% more water your soil could hold. Is that a big deal in a drought year? You bet it is. And then there are a lot of other benefits too. You have better soil porosity. You have more microbial life in your soil. You have less compaction out there. You filter your water better as it moves through, and so you have cleaner water that hits your tile lines. Soil organic matter is ridiculously important, not to mention the fact it can hold anions, even like nitrate, much, much better than just regular dirt.
That was one thing that I wanted to get into too, Brian. You mentioned the things that are going to be freely released from organic matter as it mineralizes, but I look at things like boron. On our own farm, we've talked to so many other farmers that have said, I really have a hard time holding boron in my soil, yet we've been applying boron and been able to hold it year after year, and part of the reason is we've got our organic matter levels up, so we can hold some of those anions and give them a place to hang out in the soil.
Okay, so hopefully you can see having good levels of soil organic matter is important. Now you might ask, well, what should I be shooting for? It all depends on your situation. So for me, we're starting a lot of our soils, after all these 100 years of tillage, a lot of our soils were at 2%, maybe 3%. What's our goal? What's our goal? We're at 5%. That's our goal. So if we can get our soils to 5% and maybe even 6 or 7, that's good. Now there is a top end to this too. I'd say if you're above 8 to 10% soil organic matter, well, you could actually hold too much stuff. You might not find that you're getting the release that you want out of herbicides, for example. So I would say the ideal range for me is probably in the 5 to 7% organic matter range.
That's a nice thing to say, Brian, but an easy way to do a test on your farm to see, well, what could I get to relatively easily just by changing some practices? Pull a fence line sample. So you've got a fence line and that ground never gets tilled. It's probably been in that same fence row for years and years, maybe forever. Pull a sample in the fence line, then pull a sample out in the middle of your field and just compare and see what the organic matter difference is. If you have a 6% organic matter level in your fence line and you're now down at 2% out in the field, well, you can see, oh, I can get back up to 6 if I just knock the tillage off and change a few of my practices. But if you're at a 2 in the fence line and you're a 2 in the field, okay, now I don't exactly know how far you can push it. Maybe you have a real light sandy soil, which is going to be pretty tough to build organic matter in.
No, but you still can. So let's talk about how do you build soil organic matter. Number one thing, reduce tillage. This is not saying you necessarily have to go no-till. You can do a little bit of tillage and still increase soil organic matter, but you got to keep that to a minimum. So that's by far and away number one. Number two, plant crops with lots of roots. A lot of people think that all this above ground residue is where organic matter gets built from. That is absolutely not true. The above ground residue that's just sitting there in the soil surface, that's to protect your soil. Where organic matter gets built from predominantly is roots breaking down in the soil. So as much as you can leave your roots intact, that's the real key. And obviously, the more roots you have, the faster you can build your soil organic matter. So let's just take corn versus soybeans. Corn, on average, has roughly 5 times the root mass of soybeans. So theoretically, I should be able to build my organic matter a lot faster with corn than I can soybeans.
And the key thing here is we reduce the tillage, is leave that root mass intact, as you mentioned. So that's where strip till comes into play. Say you're in 30-inch rows and you're tilling an 8-inch strip. halfway in between those 2 rows of corn stalks, that's great because you left 95% of that root mass intact.
Yep, okay, so yes, strip till is gonna help, maybe not quite as much as no-till, but in strip till you can still build organic matter levels pretty fast as well.
Well, the challenge here, Brian, though, is the next thing we'll talk about is manure and compost, using those as part of your fertilizer plan. If you're gonna put manure and compost out there, I really like to till that in. So you may have to just say, you may have to say if you're using dry material, all right, I'm going to till it in, but I'm only going to do that once every 4th or 5th year. We see many growers doing that of, you know what, I'm just going to do tillage, but it's only going to be sporadically in a 10-year cycle. That way it can mainly be no-till.
Okay, 2 other things you can do to increase organic matter levels on your farm. 1 is use cover crops, and 2, start using some biologicals, or as we like to call them, natural products. We've seen good results from those as well.
Well, organic matter is super important. Make sure that your soil tests this fall have an organic matter reading so you can start managing that on your farm. Well, one other thing you definitely have to manage is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Weed of the week is one we commonly see in non-crop areas. It's wild 4 o'clock.
All right, Brian, you're gonna hate when I say this, but it's kind of pretty. I don't mind seeing wild 4 o'clock across the road in the neighbor's ditch. However, I don't want it in my ditch because all of a sudden it creeps out into the first few rows of my field, and it's a perennial weed. Now, anytime you've got a perennial, this one isn't super highly competitive. It doesn't spread like wildfire out there, but it still is going to compete in the local area and impact your yield. So if it gets in the wrong spot, we want to try and control it.
Okay, so talking about how to control this in pastures and some of these non-crop areas, usually people will tell us they use 2,4-D. You can absolutely do that, but you got to have the rate high. Dicamba works pretty well too. Personally, I like Distinct even better. When you start thinking about some of the long-term residual products like, let's say, Tordon or Milestone, I think Tordon is fine. Milestone maybe not quite as good, but personally,
Tordon's a little more broad spectrum. I agree with you.
I'd rather use 2,4-D.
I'd rather use Roundup, to be honest with you. If you get it away from grass that you want to keep, Roundup works pretty darn nice on wild 4 o'clock. That would be my best solution.
Yeah, so out in a field as a burn down or in Roundup Ready crops, Roundup is a good option. If I'm looking at corn, usually we're talking about verdict down, status, plus maybe a little atrazine post-emerge. In soybeans, I'd probably run with our 3-Pre program. That's a yellow, one of the PPOs, Valor Authority, plus Metribuzin. That'll work pretty well. Post-emerge, you got so many options now in soybeans, in Roundup-tolerant crops, Liberty-tolerant crops, 2,4-D-tolerant crops, Dicamba-tolerant crops. Lots of choices.
Yeah, and if you really want to save this wild 4 o'clock plant, just dig it up, but make sure you're digging a real big area around it to get all of that root system, and then plant it in your brother's yard.
Oh, one last thing. Wheat, I'd start with Sharpen, follow post-emerge with Husky, and that should work pretty well.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed of the Week, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
I need results, so I choose the one system I trust to take weeds down and keep them down on even my toughest acres with the kind of yield potential that helps keep me in the black to deliver my kind of results season after season. I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. I choose results.
I've been completely satisfied with the job that XtendiMax has done.
It's a good product. It kills the weeds. I'm extremely happy with my weed control. We're going 100% Extend next year as well.
This might be the best overall farm average on soybeans I'll have.
It works so much better than anything else that we used in the past.
It's been remarkable. We have seen a tremendous yield potential increase.
The XtendiMax takes the weeds down.
It just flat out works.
You spend all year working hard to get as much yield as possible at harvest. The last thing you want to do is put your grain in the bin and have it spoil before you take it to market. Introducing the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer looking for a low-cost monitoring solution for existing bins, the Grain Temp Guard tracks temperature and humidity with an alarm system to alert you when your grain exceeds safe thresholds. For more information on a system for your bins, visit farmshopmfg.com.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for Springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
At Harvest, you have one goal: finding the perfect flow of grain from the field to the bin. Case IH axial flow combines are engineered for matched capacity to deliver proven grain savings, so you can keep efficiency flowing smoothly. Find yours with the Case IH Axial Flow.
Stopping tough-to-kill weeds and eliminating the green bridge between wheat crops are both critical. But how should you set your sprayer up to accomplish those tasks? We'll discuss on today's Iron Talk. Burndown applications following a wheat crop often involve Roundup plus either dicamba or 2,4-D. With all of these products, physical drift can be a concern, and with dicamba and 2,4-D, we're also worried about potential volatility. Controlling droplet size is important. Using tips like the Hypro ULD Ultra Low Drift tips can keep physical drift to a minimum. Keeping spray volume toward the lower side keeps droplets concentrated with product, which improves control when weeds are small. Now, when weeds are bigger, like in a lot of the unplanted acres from this year, or if you just didn't do a burn down right after wheat harvest, it can be a big concern. You need to land more product on each of those weeds. Keeping ground speed down to 15 miles an hour or less is also important to help minimize drift. Finally, keeping your boom height low is critical to minimizing drift potential. Now, depending on your nozzles, spray pattern, and weed height, you should aim for your boom to be no more than 2 feet above the crop. Now, this may mean switching out your spray tips or your nozzle spacing to accomplish this goal. As for volatility, the new 2,4-D products have performed very well this year. Freelex and Enlist Duo both contain the new 2,4-D choline, which is such an upgrade over the esters and amines that we've used for the last 40 years. Now, we used both Freelex and Enlist Duo on our farm over the last several years here, and we've had absolutely no issues whatsoever. So I'd recommend them every time, and I would never recommend using the old ester or amine again. The volatility reduction is just that big of a deal. So follow all these guidelines and consider using the new formulations of 2,4-D to boost your burndown applications. You'll be more effective on the weeds and less likely to affect anything else outside your field. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we've got for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM 147 at 2 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, farm basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.